And, you know, if you kind of get to know me a little more, you would know that websites are something that I started back in freshman year of high school. I started self-teaching. And really, as time went on, you know, I got into college. You don't really do websites much in a computer science degree, but I've still continued doing it individually. I'm very business-like oriented, so I've been doing lots of things. I have a small business that works with helping other businesses with their website. And so we use things like Webflow, WordPress, that type of stuff, like pretty consistently. And so today, just kind of like showing you Webflow. Webflow is my personal favorite. I'm really biased towards it, but hopefully as we go through, you can see why. I think it's really great opportunity to learn website development as like a side thing, you know, or if you just want to learn a new skill, I think it's really, really easy to pick up and you can actually have a lot of fun with it. So hopefully you gain a lot of value from what I did today for you in terms of this presentation. You'll see once we get into it. Yeah. Was there anything else, Ms. Kazemi, or do you want me to go ahead and get started with the presentation?
You take it away. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Let me make everyone smaller here so I can have the maximum room. All right, so forgive me if I cough a bit. It's gonna be a lot of talking. This is your introduction to web dev with Webflow. The layout that I'm trying to get for today is I want us to get into the mindset of a website developer for a little bit. And then afterwards, I'm gonna, you know, kind of go over and get us started with Webflow. So the way that I have this set up is I have the slideshow, and then I also have sort of like the Webflow screen right here. And I'm gonna be going back and forth between the two, and this is the reason why. So first off, my main goal for today is to kind of like get you into web development. I'm assuming that if you're taking this, you haven't done any web development yet, or you've probably done very little. I think this is going to be very, very beneficial for you. I want to make this as proper, like the best intro to web development as I can, especially as someone who's self-taught for many years. I think that if you go through the slideshow specifically, you'll learn so much that, you know, it'll be the very best like intro that you could probably get. So my goal with these slides, you scroll down, I'm not gonna hide it from you, there's a lot of slides in here. There's actually 80 slides. I spent the last 2 days like putting together a lot of stuff on this slideshow. I'm not going to go through each slide. I actually have like another notepad open and I know what pages directly to go to. There's a lot of information here. Treat it like it's a book, right? I'm gonna share this link with everyone. And if Webflow web development is something that you actually want to do, you want to continue with, this slideshow, I guarantee you will set you on that right path. Yeah. So for today, like kind of going back to what I was saying before, I'm going to go into some detail on some major topics, I guess, in web development, but like they're basic, but they're bigger. And the reason why I go through all of them is simply because if you're going to be doing Webflow, if you're going to be doing WordPress, if you're going to be actually learning to code with HTML, CSS, stuff like that, whatever it is, these concepts are going to stay the same. And I personally think that by understanding those concepts, it's going to make you better off, right? And so that's why if you go through the slideshow, you'll see that there's a lot of like, there's specific concepts that I go really deep into, and I think it's going to be super helpful for you overall. So why Webflow, right? Because I'm biased, as I mentioned earlier, but for good reason. First off, for me personally, I had probably the most shallow learning curve. Now, to be fair, this was after like kind of already knowing web development, but still comparative to something like WordPress, Webflow for me was actually easier to just understand. Everything was there, less frustration, I can guarantee you that. It's very realistic in terms of actual code, and that's good for you because I know we're starting with the no code sort of like portion of everything, but I'm assuming that if you're a computer science student or whatever, or you want to get into web development to begin with, you're eventually going to have to see and touch some of this code. So out of all of them, I think Webflow is probably the closest to real code. More specifically, you have a good, the user interface is very easy. I say here you get to easily drag and drop divs. There's other stuff where you can drag and drop, but personally for Webflow, I think it's probably the best, just it's the easiest to use. And again, the least amount of frustration on my part. And also, if you want to start an actual website, like you want to start something for your business or side hustle or whatever, you just want to put a website up there and you actually want to get a paid plan, it's only $12 a month. That's the cheapest plan. $12 a month if you pay for a year. So that's like under $200. You can get a really easy to use website that I think is more than worth it. So in this, I guess, tutorial or seminar, whatever we can call it, I'm going to focus more on the tools that Webflow gives you rather than kind of like building something. I don't think I would be doing the best service to you if I just kind of said, well, today we're going to build a, portfolio, just kind of follow along with me, right? Because I'm going to teach you how to do one thing. You're going to see that there's plenty of tools. And by showing you how to do one thing, I feel like I'm going to leave out a lot of them and you're not really going to get a good enough, knowledge about everything. So there's plenty of online tutorials out there. You'll learn this as you continue on through your journey. There's plenty of online tutorials out there. You can watch hours and hours. I don't want to be another online tutorial, but I do really want to get a lot of these concepts, make them very easy for you to understand, and then kind of like present them to you through using Webflow as an interface. And like I kind of mentioned, why focus on the concepts rather than just about Webflow? Overall, I think that would give you the most amount of value, one. But two, I also believe that, if you're going to be doing web development or computer science in your future, understanding concepts is always very important, right? As I'm pretty sure, sorry, I got a 20% sign there. So we'll see if I can hold on. But anyways, yeah, so if you're going to be continuing on, I'm pretty sure anyone like Ms. Kazemi or whatnot can tell you, you're probably not going to learn one language and that's going to be it, right? You're probably going to be going through so many different languages as you go through your schooling, as you go through different jobs, but the concepts are the things that stay the same. And so that's why I think, if you approach everything trying to learn the concepts behind it, I think that's going to be very valuable for you. So Webflow, on the grander scheme of things, there's many different types of websites out there. There's pages, blogs, static sites, which are kind of the most typical, right? But dynamic sites are what are becoming more prevalent. And also they're the sites that I guess people like to use the most just because they probably have the best kind of interface. As I mentioned there, you code it once, you spend the rest of your life fixing it because you're dealing with things like databases, like it gets to a point where it's so complicated that you're on that side and it becomes a whole thing. But Webflow and these web builders, what they do is they're able to do a huge amount of sites. Like there's actually really big websites, like big businesses, big brands that use things like they use web builders for their sites, which is actually pretty interesting, right? And it's because these web builders can actually handle a lot of that. So that's the direction that we're going in for sure, just kind of making it easier to manage all this stuff. But the reason why I'm telling you this is so that you can see that Webflow is a super powerful tool. These web builders are a super powerful tool. They're not necessarily like discounted. They're not like a discounted form of code, if that makes sense. I think if I look at my notes, yes, I need to go over, let me go over here. I'll skip a few slides. So let's actually start with Webflow. Like I mentioned, you can always go through, read through the other slides if you want. So now I'm going to kind of like slow down a little bit. I don't know if everyone already has an account set up. Does everyone have an account
Not
set
yet.
up?
So you might want to give them a little time, maybe demonstrate the process.
Okay, let me see how I can do this, because see how I can do this. So should I open up a new incognito?
Yeah, just go for it incognito. That's probably the best.
Okay, give me 1 second here. I'm gonna try sharing my screen on the incognito tab now. Okay. I don't really want it to go there. So let's try to go create an account on Webflow. Yeah, I'm gonna say don't have an account. You should be able to use a Google account. I recommend doing that. Or if you want to, use something else, you can always do that.
Is there a login with, sign in with Google. So just use your Sweetwater Schools account. That would be the easiest.
Yeah. It should be fine. And you get 2 free, I might as well talk about this now. You get 2 free websites on the account, like 2 free sites that you can host. And that's actually really, really nice, really nice. Yeah, so I'll give everyone some time. I think I'll give you like 3, 4, 5 minutes. I'm gonna try to see if I can connect my phone because I did get the 20% warning.
Yeah,
So
that
give me
sounds
like
good. Go for it.
1 sec.
Yeah, so again, students, if you're following along, the link is in the chat, webflow.com. And as you can see on Veltson's screen, when you do that, you can click on sign up. And on that screen, you have an option to sign in with an existing Google account. So my advice would be to click that button and to log in with your sweetwaterschools.net account. And it might ask you for some information like your name, so fill that out. And then once you're ready, it would really help us out if you just put like ready in the chat once you have created your account.
Are you able to
Thanks,
see me
Allison.
still? There you go.
It's okay. We don't mind if you shout at us.
Oh, am I too loud?
No, Allison put ready in all caps.
Oh,
Ooh, okay, so if you are a current student of Miss Cruz, she will give you double extra credit for creating a website. And
wait.
for my students, I also already said this, but you get an additional 5 points of extra credit. In addition to the 5 points I'm giving you for attending, you get another 5 points if you link me to the website you create.
Yeah.
So make sure you're following along with Mr. Bastien here.
I can't see myself. Am I here? Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
There
you're
you go.
there. You cut out for like a second, but you came back.
Okay. Let me see something. Okay, my phone is charging. That is good. I think we are good. I hope we're good. We'll see. If I die unexpectedly, you'll know why.
That's all right. We'll wait for you if you die.
Awesome. Okay, so if you do create, you should be able to get here. Very simply, you should be able to create a new project. I don't think I can because this is a free account, but any of these will work
Oh, I
basically.
think you need to share your non-incognito tab again, right?
Okay, goodness gracious. Sorry, these
No,
scam
it's okay.
calls.
I do that all the time.
Scam calls getting you. Yeah, let me share. Let me reshare this screen here. So yeah, you should be able to see this. What's the chat looking like, Miss Kazemi? Is everyone
Looks
ready?
like, yeah, a lot of people are ready.
Anyone stuck? Is
If you're
anyone stuck?
stuck,
Does
you
it need a little
can,
bit of help?
if you don't want to fess up to it in the main chat, you can direct message me if you're stuck.
There was
If
a
we create
chat.
our own real website, we get more extra credit. Yes, Natalie, that is true. You are my student and you will get an additional 5 points of credit if you make a website.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna assume that everyone's good to go, right? No one said to stop. So let's go back in here. Gonna open up this portfolio. And as like a small FYI, this project that I had was from a stream that I did probably a few months ago. I was just kind of like doing a stream on my Instagram, showing people how to get started with Webflow. So that's where a lot of this is from. I could, put that up on YouTube if you think that would help you out. But to be honest, there are other probably better, better filmed videos out there, tutorials, whatnot. Anyways, I'm gonna get started. We're gonna go throughout the whole editor here. I'm gonna go from the left side over onto the right side, and we're gonna finish up with the top. And if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. I talk pretty fast, so don't be afraid to put a chat or just turn on your mic and say, hey, I have a question real quick. I take no offense to that because I know I talk pretty fast. Okay. If you go on over to the ad section, right? This is on the top left. What you're gonna see here is you have plenty of elements. You see here that you can add in either an element or you can add in a layout. This is pretty cool if you want to add in something like a subscription form, a feature, hero. This is all this stuff. This is like super, it's already done for you. So literally just drag and drop, super easy. You go here to the elements as well. You're going to, you can scroll down, you see that there's plenty of stuff that you can add. The things that have the stars on them, you do need to have a paid account. But to be honest, you're probably not going to need that, especially, if you're going to be using these things, you might as well have a paid account anyways, just because, you should use that. Going from top to bottom though, you'll see up here we have a section, container, grid, and column. And I also want to bring attention to the div block. The reason why is because the div block is probably the most important out of all. I hope it's not lagging too much, the screen. But the div block is probably the most important element out of them all. So what's an element more specifically? An element is kind of like a basic unit of websites, right? Websites are made out of thousands and thousands of elements. If you've ever done that whole right-click inspect element thing, that's what you're doing. You're able to go in and actually see that type of stuff. So the div block is super important because it's a container type element. And what that means is you can put other elements inside it. Very simple. If you go back to the slideshow, you'll see that I actually talk a lot about container elements. And the reason why is because understanding how if you apply a rule to the container, how it applies to its children and vice versa. I can actually go back here, waiting for my screen to catch up. There you go. I'm gonna quickly fly through. I'm not gonna read everything again because it's a lot. But basically what you see here is that I have a block, a square. I put another square inside of it. If I make that outer square red, everything becomes red. And if I made the inner one blue, the rules of the inner one kind of like takes precedence. So if I put an element inside a container element, if I don't set any of the rules, the default rules for that inner element, for this, what is now a blue square, the default rules are going to be the rules that were set in the outer one, which is the red, as you saw previously, right? Red. But then when I go in to the inner one and I say, you can set your own rules, for example, it sets its own color to be blue, then that takes precedence over. I also continue to explain that a little more by showing the same thing with text. So you have the ability to specify left, center, right, depending on what you need. But I also showed how you can have multiple divs. There's the link to the slides. Yeah, we can send those over. Do you need me to send that right now?
Yeah, go ahead and put it in there.
Let me share.
I can always reshare it if people ask once you do that.
Okay, let me see. Copy link. Oh, wow. Copy link. It's always hard navigating and finding the chat when you're like screen sharing. You ever
I
notice
know.
that?
There you
Okay.
go. Thank you.
Of course, please let me know if you're unable to see it or something like that. But continuing on, right? We have these divs here, and you see that, if you
Sorry,
read through,
Veltson.
it'll tell you
I don't want
exactly.
you to get too into it. It says you need access. I think it's still only for certain people.
Oh, only for UCSB?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, oh dear.
Oh dear.
Don't you love technical difficulties always come up
Yeah.
when Murphy's Law? All right, I'll refresh that. I'll send it back out. We'll see if we can make this happen here.
Okay.
And yeah, like Mr. Demi mentioned, I'm not gonna go too deep into stuff, but I really do want you to kind of like understand the direction that I'm going here. Restricted, only people added. No, I want everyone to be able to open it. Anyone. There you go. And let's copy this link. There you go.
Yeah,
That
that
should be
works.
good.
Thank you. It works.
Awesome. And yeah, that's pretty much how these container elements work. You know, they get to set the rules for their inner classes. And if you put extra stuff in there, you know, you'll see how it changes. If you scroll down here a bit, you'll see this is where I was kind of playing around with stuff. You can see that I have a div block right here, and then I have stuff in here, right? Let me disconnect this. But you can set different properties, you know, see if over here I can set different alignment properties, for example, and you'll be able to see that even though I'm setting it on the div block, it affects the stuff that are inside. That's pretty much the main point. Let's continue on. The next thing that you'll see is this symbols tab right here. And this is pretty helpful if you want to create something that's constantly replicated throughout the site. Most commonly, if you have a footer and you want that footer to be present everywhere, it's just helpful to create an instance of it and, you know, name it footer, and then you can just put that wherever you want. As you can see, I have an instance here called brain. And the way that I created that, literally, let me create another one. Let's create another one with this person here. What you do is you click on it, create a new symbol, and you can call it whatever you want, right? And now, every single time that I want to refer to this image, instead of having to like create a new image, upload it in, I can just go here, back to the instance, and I can just click on it, and then it'll populate. Wherever my cursor is, that's where it's going to come back up. So it's pretty simple, very self-explanatory. This navigator right here is probably the most, you know, it's one of the most useful things that you could use. It's really helpful for seeing things, especially when you have things that are on top of each other. Like for example, right here, I have my name on top of a background. If I wanted to access this background right here, you see once I click on it, it kind of gets close to it here on the navigator, but I could kind of click through, get the div block outside of that, or the section, or the body, depending on what it is that I want to do. Here, this is where you see the pages. And if you go, if you add more pages, you'd be able to see them all here. You're able to add more pages. As an FYI, if you're going to be making a website, don't delete any of these pages, even though you're not using them, because you won't be able to create any more on a free plan. So just keep what they give you, delete it at the end. They give you probably like 5 or 6 sometimes. I just deleted stuff for whatever reason, depending on the template. If you click on the settings here, you get to change the site's name. So again, this is like really simple stuff, like if you want to call it something fancy, if you want to add in a description, all that stuff, you can do it here. CMS collections. This is probably one of Webflow's biggest selling points. What CMS stands for is a content management service, and that's pretty much why a lot of people use sites like these. A lot of people want to post a blog, right? They want to have something where people can come on and see certain images, or you know, they want to post videos, whatever it is. You do that all through a content management system. And if you look at the slides, what you'll see is that I said this is probably the closest that you're going to get to actually touching the back end / database side of things, right? It's very simple to create a collection. You just create this button up here. And here what you would say is you can choose whatever template you want. So if you want to have a blog post, very simple, you create that there. Recipes too, if you want to do something for cooking. You can create the name. The URL is already right here. You can put in your own like URL name if you want to do that. And then in here, you would kind of specify what type of information is this. So is this just like text, you know, blog? I think you're also able to add in, yeah, these are all the types of things you can add in: dates, video links, options, files. So you have plenty of choices in terms of things that you can do. And this is also what I would like to call a thank you Webflow moment. And the reason why is because on a free site, at least for blog posts, you can have up to 40 for free, which is like they're hosting that all for you for free, you know, so that's actually really good. I don't think you can do that. I don't really know if you can do that anywhere else. Exit. No, exit without saving. The next thing is the e-commerce. I can't really show you much of this unless if we upgrade. But just to give you like very basic information on that, the e-commerce, you pay pretty much the same that you would pay anywhere else for, setting up e-commerce on your site. Is it worth it paying for e-commerce? Yes, because they'll handle payments and security and all that stuff for you. I think it's very useful. Just in case if you're like trying to start a small store and you want a website, I think it's worth it paying for the e-commerce on here. This next pane over here is your assets. So this is where you get to upload things. To upload, you come over here to the cloud and you're able to click here and choose a file from your computer. You can also upload different types of files, JPG, PNG, PDFs, and I think videos, you can upload videos, but they need to be below 30 megabytes. Even if you have a paid plan, they have to be really small videos. So there's a few like tips on how to make those smaller, but you can always research that and kind of see like how to get smaller videos below 30 megabytes. And that way you're able to use them on your site. And of course, in any other case, if you wanted to use bigger videos, it would have to be through like YouTube or something where you can pull the link in, and then there, of course, there's no limit. So this is the settings tab. You can either search through, well, to kind of like talk more about search, you do need to have a plan. But basically, this is just kind of like controlling the settings of like how people can search things on your site. If you have like multiple different pages, how can people find those different pages on Google, for example? And here, you're able to manage your backups. So this is also another thank you Webflow moment, because if you noticed, this is pretty much a lot of backups. And these are all kept for free. This is a free plan. So in case if something happens, which it never has happened to me, but in case something happens, Webflow crashes, you lose your stuff, as long as it saves, which it does automatically, you should be able to get, your version back. So this is kind of like the top left quadrant. I was wondering if anyone had any questions before I continued on. Any questions about anything? I'll wait for like 10, 20 seconds. Someone can type.
So I don't know if you were planning on doing this, but because I know you have like this you did this on your Instagram live stream. Could you
Yeah.
demonstrate how you actually add the divs and then how you add elements like text or images inside of the div?
Oh yeah, for sure. Let me see. I'm gonna delete some stuff here just so I can redo it. There you go. So first off, to kind of like go towards there, as you notice, the section that I have the website kind of broken up into multiple sections. And as I mentioned before, a section is a type of container element. Now, with Webflow, if you try putting a section inside a section, it's not going to let you. Likewise with a container, right? In reality, that's just a Webflow thing, but sections and containers are kind of used as like the biggest type of container that you can put stuff in. I guess that's just more convention, if not anything. So if you want to add in a div, as you can do, you just, click, drag, release. You notice here that the div already takes up its own width, its own height, and stuff like that. And actually, once we go over to the other side, I'll show you how to style different things. That's why I was, waiting for any questions on this side. Let's say we wanted to add in some text. We just find text. I think I passed it. We can actually add a heading first. And say something like Webflow, no code seminar. And if I wanted to access, notice how you can just click on it. And here you already see a little thing that says heading. I wish I could zoom in so you could see better. But here you can click on the little gear icon, and that will allow you to change some tiny settings about it. So you can change it from an H1 to an H2, H3, H4. Notice how it gets smaller. That's another little concept there. Now, say I wanted to access that div that I put it in. Like I mentioned, again, you can either go here to the navigator, click on it. Now you're, working with the div block. Or let me go back here. You can click on the heading right here, and you'll see that it kind of opens up the tree of, is it showing on? There you go. You'll see that it kind of opens up a tree here, and you'll see that this heading, H1, is in a div block, and that div block is in section 3. So that's really cool. If you want to access section 3, you can easily do that. Div block, you can easily do that too. So let's go back to the div block. Now let's add in some more text. Scroll down here and put in a paragraph. Easy peasy, right? And then it already puts in some lorem just to kind of hold the structure for you. Very, very simple. You can go back to div. You can add in as many items as you want. No limits to that. And once we get over to the other side, I'll be able to show you kind of like styling that. So if there's no questions on anything from previous, I'm just going to quickly show you the bottom right corner here, just because you probably, are curious. Paragraph is used for general. Yes, indeed.
Sorry, I
We can
just
use
put little
paragraph.
factoids in the chat while you demonstrate.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. And yeah, my phone is still dying on me. So I think what I'll do is once it does die, I'll just switch over to fully being on here. So fingers crossed for my laptop. Anyways, you click this like triangle looking thing here, and what you'll see is this thing called audits. Now, this is more for when you're actually building and launching a website, but the really great thing about this is it kind of does some checks on your site to make sure that it's compliant with ADA standards. That's the American Disability Act. And it's just to make sure that people who have disabilities, visually impaired, hearing impaired, that they can interact with your site. Now, getting into the specifics of how you actually do that, I included a link on the slideshow to kind of get you started in that direction, but it is really important making sure that your website actually works for that. And this audit also does like search engine optimization. So it makes sure that you're using proper headings and stuff like that. Basically, search engine optimization is the way that you make your page rank on Google. So if someone searches something, your page can be one of the first to come up. Of course, in a business setting, that's what you want. You want good SEO. But that's just that at the most basic level. This is search for your website. Very simple. You just search whatever you want. This right here, yes. As I mentioned, Webflow literally has a whole series of video tutorials here, right? So if there's anything that you want to learn, these videos are actually pretty helpful. You can literally learn anything that you need about Webflow, and that's actually pretty neat because I haven't seen this really anywhere else either. It's another thank you Webflow moment. And this I think is more like a FAQ help question type thing. It's sometimes weird to click. I don't know why, but there you go. Yeah. And you can also reset the walkthrough if it's your first time and you click like ignore, but then you want to go through and see the walkthrough again here. So there's plenty of ways for you to kind of just like figure stuff out on Webflow. Anyways, now let's move over to the left side, the right side, and make sure that this paintbrush is selected. And I'm going to move myself out of the way here. I talk a little bit about selectors in the slideshow, and what selectors are just, they're basically ways that you can choose things. I don't really want to say a selector is a way that you can select something because that's using the word in the definition, but the best way to describe it is if you want to put elements in a class, right? Like I went down here and previously I had these squares and I wanted to put them in a class, right? You can see here, when I click on this second square, it has a selector called red block because that's initially the class that I put it in. I talk a lot about classes and IDs. They're pretty much the same thing, you're supposed to use them differently, but this selector kind of functions as that class and ID. So say I wanted to, I might as well do it here. To add a new selector, if there's anything there, you can just click right next to it, right next to any that's already there. Or if there's nothing there, you can, just type one. You see that I already created red block. If you wanted to create your own, something like green block, all you do is literally type it, press enter, and that's it. It's already created, and when you go to any other element, you can add that selector to anything that you want. This as an FYI. So let's keep red block. The main point of classes when you go to them, right, is you want to be able to apply the same styles to multiple things. So very simply, I'm skipping a little bit here, but if I went over to change the background and I wanted to make it red, you see already that all three of these, because all three of these had that class, they all turn red. And that's pretty much the very, very simple part about it. Let me put this back to transparent. So continuing on down, here you'll see we have the layout options. You see that we have the display setting here, and you can either display as a block element, as a flex, as a grid, inline block, inline, or display none. I mentioned there's a lot more options, but these are kind of the basic ones. To be very honest with you, the best way for you to kind of understand how these work is just trial and error. A lot of it's going to be trial and error. Unfortunate answer. But yes, trying it. Basically, I talk about Flex a lot. What Flex does is it kind of helps you. It helps a lot with like aligning things and ordering things. Like if I click on this div block here, you can see that I think I'm using Flex. There you go. I'm using Flex now. And you notice how things already kind of shift. They were all vertical, but I made them horizontal. I can shift it to vertical, right? You see how they're aligned in the center. I can shift them all over to the right. Oh, sorry, to the left, to the right. Try to stretch them out, stuff like that. But this display option pretty much gives you the way that you can lay out elements on your site. Let's go down here. Let me see. I want to put it back to this. The next important thing is the spacing right here. You have two main ways that you can change your spacing, either with your margin or with your padding, right? The best way to remember it is margin is a space outside of your element and padding is a space inside your element. So say, for example, let's go back to where I added in some text recently, right here. So right now I just kind of like threw some text up. And as you can see, it's kind of pushing up on the outsides. So if I wanted to give it more space so that it wasn't touching the outside, what would I add? Margin or padding? I would add in some, is someone could answer. Margin or padding? I want to make more space on the outside. Well, sorry, I want to make more space on the inside. I want it to be more natural. What do you add in? Don't be shy. I don't know if anyone's commenting. I think I saw a new comment. Let me see the chat. No one? You're gonna add in some padding, right? Because you want some space. Yes.
Ooh,
Brianna.
Brianna.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Oh, it's a yeah. I mean, margin. So this is the thing, Miss Cruz. Margin would work, right? The thing is, it does the same thing. I'm not really gonna get too much into like, well, these are the cases where margin would be better, padding would be better. Trust me, once you start doing it, you'll realize, oh, okay, I should actually add in padding versus margin.
Yeah,
Right?
I still forget, and I've been doing this since like the 90s. And
Exactly.
I guess CSS, let's see, CSS is 90 something. But yeah, I usually like put it in and then like I'll preview it. I'm like, oh no, I wanted margin, not padding.
Exactly. So you can add in some padding here. I think what would have made this more clear is if I use the button as the example, because as you can see, buttons come with a kind of like preset padding. And if I wanted to make my button look a little nicer, add in a bigger area for people to click in or whatever, this is where I update the padding, right? If I went back to what it was before, if I updated the margin, all I would do is kind of push the button around, which that is necessary sometimes. Like for example, with this header, we don't want it to be all the way up to the side, right? That looks a little weird. We can add probably like 20 pixels of padding and there you go. Kind of pushes itself a little bit out. So that's just the simple, the basics of how that works. Like I mentioned, you go through it, you'll realize a lot of, what you need to do in certain cases. And here you get to set things like the size. And you get to set the width and the height, very self-explanatory there. The next important thing is kind of like these minimum and maximum width and height. So how do these work? These mostly come into play when you're making your websites mobile friendly. Because, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but when you start seeing how your website looks on different size screens, weird things start to happen, right? And you may be having things resize or whatever. So with the minimum height, what that would basically set is like your lower. Let the browser do whatever it needs to do, but do not go smaller than this. Same thing with maximum and height and width. Don't go bigger than this. Of course, again, once you start using it, you'll see the applications of where that goes. Usually though, I use this if I have like something with text and then it's getting squished on a mobile screen and then the text gets pushed out, but then I don't want it to get pushed out too far or a certain thing, then I'll set, minimum and maximum heights and width. And this overflow right here, as I mentioned before, like when you're doing mobile friendly type development, you'll see that things start getting pushed out on the edges and stuff like that. So what this basically says is, how do I want to react if that happens? Do I want to be able to see that overflow? Do I not want to see it? Or do I want to allow people to scroll through? And you can, kind of see, let's see if I can quickly do this here. Set a width of like 50, something really small. Notice how it gets all weird. And let's say I set, actually, let me put this back to what it was. Let me set the height to something really small. I think that's what I meant to do. I think right now that overflow is set to visible, right? But if I set it to not visible, notice how it goes away. If I set it to scroll, that'd look a little weird, but you notice now to see the overflow, I would click and scroll here. So it's pretty self-explanatory. This fit part, it's weird. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's yes, you'll probably never use this, to be honest, because you'll probably already do everything that you need up here in the spacing and with the width and height. So you're probably not going to use this fit feature. Basically, all it does is kind of change how your element fits within its container. That's the best way to explain it simply. The next part is position. Position is actually pretty important. And that's because you have these few options here and you can do a lot of interesting stuff with it. If you go up to here, I did kind of take it away because I wasn't going to use it anymore. Let me make this just a tiny bit bigger. A little bit bigger than that. So let's pretend that I had this header here. All right, I think this will be a good way to explain what these do. This header right now is at the top. If I start scrolling down, oh, I think I already probably set it to sticky. It's giving away the, let's put it to static. There you go. So by default, everything is kind of just set to static, right? Everything stays where it is. As you scroll down, nothing fancy happens. You're just going through the page. Everything stays where it wants to stay. Here in this position attribute, you can change certain things. So relative basically acts like static, as it mentions there, but relative means that it'll be relative to whatever container it's in. So if you have a container, you put another element inside, and you say that position of that element is going to be relative, then when you do things like, I think the best way to explain is like when you do things like scrolling or whatever, it's all going to be based off of that element, the container element. Like I mentioned, once you start using it, you'll get it. Absolute, what that does is it kind of takes away any regard for a container element. So if you have something, usually I use this for like if I want to put a logo in the top left and I don't want it to get affected by any of the links or anything else up in the menu, I'll make its position absolute. And then there, what I'm able to do, let me see if I can actually do that with this to show you kind of what it does. Notice how it just kind of goes off from what it was previously. It just shoots off to the side. And here it makes it much easier to kind of like change certain things about that. You can mess around with it and see, but you mess around with these values, playing around with it being absolute is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because you can easily move it around the page, but it's a curse because nothing else will respond to it on this page. I don't know if you noticed, but going through, when you add, especially when you add stuff, automatically, if you noticed when I was here, let me do this again so you can see. Gotta move myself over a little bit. I'm gonna add in another text. Notice how that text came in and automatically that button pushed itself down. That's how all of this works, right? You, by default, the way that website kind of like development works is everything's sort of like one vertical layout. You add stuff in one by one and it goes in one by one. You know, you'll see actually in the slides, I talk a little bit about the CSS grid and, you know, why that's now no longer the case, but the same basic structure still applies. So if I were to say, make your position absolute, if I were to say that to this text block, it would no longer, this button would no longer care that that text box was there. It would just stay right where it was. So let me go over here, find a position, make it absolute. Notice that. I hope you can see it, but that button just kind of went right up over the text and it was like, hey, I don't know if you're there anymore. And that's what happens when it's absolute. Fixed and sticky. They kind of do the same thing. To be honest, I still don't know the difference. I'm not gonna lie to you. But you use them, use them depending on what you need. Fixed kind of like keeps this thing right in place. So if you want to have like a menu that stays up at the top as you're scrolling, as some websites have, you could use fixed. I think sticky does literally the same thing. Don't know though. Oh, actually it doesn't. It does something different. To be honest, it says right here to learn how to use position sticky. I think it can tell that I don't know how to use it properly. So that's probably why. The next thing is the typography. Very, very simple. You can set your fonts. You can set the font weight, size, height, color, alignment. Very, very simple stuff. Here specifically is where you change the underline. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because when you add in links for the first time, you're going to be getting those bulky underlines under there. And everyone's like, how do I remove this? How do I remove this? It's right here under the text decoration. It's kind of hidden. In here, you can add in, a little bit more. If you click on this more type options, you'll see that you get to change things like letter spacing. I think I have a little bit of letter spacing going on over here, maybe. But if I added in like 1 pixel of letter spacing, 2, see, I get to spread out those letters there. If you want to do something really aesthetic, that's a nice way to do it. And you can also add text shadows here. That's another Google search that I saved you in the future. So the background, I kind of already showed that to you previously. You get to add in either a color or you get to add in, actually, I'm going to say block, something random. But yeah, you can change the color to whatever it is that you want. And as you noticed, when I was typing in color, I can actually type in just the actual color. I don't have to type in the hex code. Once you start, doing it more, you'll start to recognize that certain hex codes, you start to have your favorite ones. For example, 2083BF is the blue. Oh, this is the blue at the background. That was actually really smart of me to make it blend in, but that's one of my favorite blues. So I just kind of memorized that hex, but you're able to type in, standard colors. Very simple. This clipping option, honestly, I wouldn't worry about it too much. This is when you're doing some fancy stuff. So I'll just, not drag on too much. Here you have the ability to change your borders. You can change it per corner if you want to. That's very helpful. Or you can just change all the borders at once. This is where you get to change your border radius. So if you want to make let me see here, I can add a 30 pixel radius, start to make it a little curved. I think if you put like 100 px, it'll start to look kind of like a circle-ish. I don't think it's possible to make it a perfect circle. I've tried. If you want to change the style of your border, you can either have it be just a normal solid line. You can have it be dashed, more dashes. Depends on what you want to do at that point. I don't know if you can really see it. It's probably a little fine, but you know, it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of like how it works. You can make a really thick border there. Maybe you'll be able to see it better. There you go. See, so really, as you can see, as I'm going through, there's a lot of these things. You're probably not going to use all of them, but they give you so many options to do what it is that you want that you're not really limited. This whole effects section right here is just plenty of stuff for you to play around. I don't necessarily have to go through each just because I don't want to, you know, take too long, and I know we're already almost out of time. But, you know, when you're making your own website, you can go through here, figure it out. Also remember, you have your video tutorials on the side. So in case if you ever want to search how to do something, you have plenty of time. Likewise, through all of these up at the top, again, these are extra stuff that you can use to do certain special things. This page, for example, you could use this ID to, waiting for it to, there you go. This ID, you can use it if you, for example, wanted to put a link, and then once you clicked on that link, that it would scroll to a certain section of the page, for example. That's where you would use something like this. And here it's, you know, something extra. You don't, it's just a helpful tool. And here you have your interactions. So if you want to make things pop up or fade in, this is where you would do it. So that's pretty much the whole right side. As you can see, a lot of it's very easy to understand. I'm hoping I didn't get any questions, but you know, once you start clicking around, I think you'll see that it's actually pretty simple and stuff like that. So now finally up at the top over here, you'll see that we have our mobile responsiveness kind of like center. By default, it's on the desktop setting. But if I go over to here and I click on this, it'll automatically shrink the sides to as if it were a tablet. Waiting for that to update over on the computer side. This is as a phone, horizontal. And this is as a phone, vertical. And the good thing about this is that Webflow automatically saves each change. So what hello, hello.
There we go. Yeah, you're back.
I think my laptop died. Oops. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, sorry, what was that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
You're good. Oh, okay, thank you, thank you. Yeah, my phone died. But let's continue on here. Yeah, so automatically Webflow saves that code for every specific breakpoint. And you can click and drag. Once you start clicking, you'll see that this, for example, is for iPhone XRs. They already have those in there. iPhone XS. Continue going smaller, you'll see that this is for iPhones, even iPods. So it's really, really helpful. You can literally, for each breakpoint, every single time you move the size, you can go in and you can change the certain things over here on the left side and on the right side, and you'll see that they stay consistent depending on what's happening. So that's actually really interesting because a lot of these web builders don't do that.
Awesome. So we just have a few minutes left. So you want to wrap up?
Yeah, there's literally like 2 more things for me to show you. Up here, basically, this green check mark just means that everything's saved. Like I mentioned before, everything gets saved automatically. This is your undo and redo. Right here, you have the ability to export to code. So if you wanted to switch over from Webflow to something else like WordPress or whatever, or you just wanted to code this by hand, you could do that. To do this, though, I think you need a paid plan. Here, this is how you can share the project. But the other nice thing is that Webflow automatically gives you your own link. So if I go out to here, you'll see that I automatically get my own link at Veltson portfolio, and they all end in a .webflow.io. But to be honest, if you're doing it for just a class project or something, this is very, very useful. And it's nice too, because it's also free. And that's pretty much the whole overall layout of everything. I hope that you can see that there's so much that you can do. I really do encourage you to go through and play around with this and try, I guess, to learn a lot about web development as you're using this. I think you'll see that some things will be a little challenging. I promise you, you will get stuck on more than one thing. You just got to be patient with it. Don't be afraid to go online, search, figure stuff out. I think you all are pretty resourceful, so I don't have to really preach too much on, figuring out the answer when you need to. But this is very, very rewarding. And I think that if you get deep into this, you'll see that this is a very interesting world to get into. Let me scroll all the way down. Notice a few of you are on here. I wanted to also kind of give a little bit of information about like things that I used when I was first starting. W3 Schools, that is a website that they have extensive HTML, extensive CSS. They actually teach a lot about other languages too. I highly, highly recommend that you go there and that you actually use it as a resource. It's completely free, which is crazy because Ms. Kazemi, have you used W3 Schools?
I use it all the time because they
All the
have
time.
examples that you could just run and modify the code and test things out. It's so useful.
Exactly. So this is probably one of the best resources, and it's completely free, like I mentioned. Watch YouTube videos. I think one of the most popular like web development person out there is Traversy Media, and I included a link to this person's channel. You can, even though some of it will be in HTML and CSS, like I mentioned, because Webflow is very similar, you can kind of like work with those type of, you can work with those videos but also kind of implement the same thing, but in Webflow. And if anything, it'll be easier to do it that way. And the third thing that I mentioned is kind of building fake websites and copy already existing ones. I think this is probably the best way to like learn once you get past the initial stages. So I'm hoping that when you went through this, you saw that it wasn't too complicated to use. Everything's pretty self-explanatory. But when it becomes difficult is when you start trying to build out your own site and then all of a sudden, your site might look a little basic and you're gonna say, well, I want to make it look nicer. So you can go on to some of your favorite sites, find something that you like a really nice drop down or something like that, and try to replicate it. And then you're gonna run into a lot of challenges, and that's exactly how you learn. So it's literally step by step by step.
And
And
that's
finally,
exactly what I did too, Veltson, in the 90s. You
oh
just
yeah,
right click on that website, view the source, look at
there you
how it's
go.
done, copy and paste it, and then like modify it and see how what effect takes hold after you change it up a little bit.
Exactly. I love the Apple website because they're always changing and doing really cool stuff. So trying to figure out how they do certain things, that's for sure a learning experience. There's always something that you can learn. And well, yeah, finally, this is kind of like the end, I guess, of this whole spiel. Like I mentioned, these are the slides here if you want to go through and see what I spent the last 2 days working on. I wanted to leave my email here in case if you wanted to, reach out to me or just kind of like stay in contact. I can talk about things like the university experience in general as a CS student, being away from home. I know a lot of your seniors, and you'll probably be maybe not next year, but the year after going to college and whatnot. And if you just want someone in STEM, more specifically in engineering, if to kind of like tell you what have I experienced and like what everything is, I'm 100% fine answering questions. Websites, true. If you have any questions with Webflow and you want to ask someone or you want me to personally look at something with you and work with you, I'm 100% down to do that. I think having someone there who can kind of guide you when you need it is pretty important. And so I'll personally appreciate actually being able to help any of you if you do want to go further with this. And finally, yeah, if you just want to know someone who's doing computer science because you're going to also do computer science and you're curious of how that's going to work, you can contact me for all those reasons. That's my email right there. My handles on pretty much all social media is just my name. So I will always respond to all students, CS students, non-CS, SUHI, non-SUHI. There's no limit. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it, Miss Kazami. I think we did a good a good push
Yeah,
there on
this is
on
a
Webflow.
awesome job, Veltson. Thank you so much for coming back and, giving back to your SUHI community. I'm sure we all appreciate it. For students who are wanting to go above and beyond, uh, just getting the attendance credit if you want to create a Webflow website. Maybe you've already kind of started. I will not only link you to Veltson's slides, but also give you a direct link to some of the tutorials that he referenced, including what was that, the W3 schools that I always use all the time. Super helpful as well. And so look for that email probably within the next hour. I'll send that out to everyone. Anyways, thank you again so much, Veltson, and thank you to our students and staff who have made it out tonight. Even though we were working all day and in school all day, thank you so much for coming back and sitting in front of the computer for another hour.
Yeah.
I hope you all have a great evening, and tomorrow's Friday. So get
Woohoo!
ready to, I guess, not relax because finals is next week, but we're almost there.
Yes.
We're almost there. Bye, everyone. Stay safe.